So get this. Picture it. 1990, the Berlin Wall is down, the world's kind of holding its breath, waiting for what's next, and suddenly, bam, Nelson Mandela walks free. After 27 years in prison, and you've brought us these incredible sources about this moment, this huge turning point, and I gotta say, I'm ready to dive into the how and the why this still matters so much, even now.
Yeah, it's bigger than just one man walking out of prison, right? It's like this hinge in history where, for a minute, anything felt possible. And we're not even just talking about South Africa, but this global shift in how we think about equality, about what real leadership could actually look like.
Okay, so for those of us who weren't around to really get the whole picture back then, set the scene, Apartheid, we know it was brutal, obviously, but what was the vibe in those final years leading up to it?
Imagine a pressure cooker. Inside South Africa, you've got this growing resistance, right? And then even within the white minority government, you have these factions arguing about how long they can really hold on. And then outside, you have the sanctions starting to hit hard, and all these world leaders are suddenly rallying behind Mandela. So it's not just about freeing one guy, it's about dismantling this whole system the world had finally officially condemned.
So it's almost like Mandela, even stuck on Robben Island, he was the center of this global storm that's brewing.
Exactly. And that is why February 11th, 1990 had this electric feeling to it. It wasn't just that he walked free, it was the way the entire world reacted. This wave of joy, this feeling that if something as deep-rooted and awful as apartheid could fall apart, then man, anything was possible.
I noticed our sources mention that President de Klerk lifted the ban on the ANC, just days before Mandela's release. Was that the gamble that changed everything?
I mean, it was a calculated risk, definitely.
Yeah.
By unbanning the ANC and other anti-apartheid groups, de Klerk is signaling, okay, maybe I'm open to talking. But can you imagine the tension in the air? This man, Mandela, after a generation in prison, is now expected to lead the very people who put him there toward peace.
That's unbelievable. What gets me is, after 27 years, you'd think most people would be just filled with anger, right? But Mandela's first speech, he's talking forgiveness. That's not just being smart. That's almost spiritual, you know?
And that's exactly why it struck such a chord everywhere. People, they were starving for that kind of hope. This wasn't just South Africa healing. It was the whole world daring to believe in something bigger than revenge. And that feeling, that yearning for something better, it really did spark something. Movies, music, art, everywhere you looked, people were grappling with apartheid.
Yeah.
But also with this idea that maybe we could overcome anything.
Totally. It's like Mandela walking free wasn't just a news story. It was this catalyst for a global artistic movement. We've got Cry Freedom, Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. And these films, they weren't just biographies. They felt, urgent. Like they were trying to capture this wave of change as it was happening.
And these films, they brought the issue to a way bigger audience. Because a lot of people, they knew apartheid was bad, but these stories, they made it real. They put a human face on it.
And the music, oh man, the music. It seemed like every single artist I listened to growing up had a song about Mandela or against apartheid. It wasn't just background noise anymore. It felt like fuel for a movement.
100%. You got U2, Peter Gabriel, Tracy Chapman. These artists used their platform to give Mandela's message a megaphone, to make it impossible to ignore. I just think, how different would it be if this happened now,
Yeah.
Would social media help or hurt a figure like Mandela?
That's a whole other deep dive right there.
Right.
But okay, getting back to our sources, I thought this whole Madiba shirt thing was fascinating. Talk about turning the tables, huh?
It's kind of genius when you think about it.
Sure.
This man, imprisoned by a system, obsessed with race, with putting people in boxes, he gets out and embraces these bright, colorful shirts that just scream African pride. Yeah. He's taking back the narrative, right? Turning a symbol of oppression into a symbol of celebration.
It's not just fashion, is it? Our sources say this was actually a strategy on Mandela's part.
Oh, absolutely. By wearing these shirts, he was showing that unity he talks so much about. He was showing white South Africans, a lot of whom were scared of what black leadership would look like, that their culture wasn't being erased, it was becoming a part of something new.
And speaking of weaving things together, even Mandela's love of rugby, which everyone thought of as this right South African sport, that was another power move, wasn't it?
Totally. When he publicly supported the Springboks, the national team, he was tapping into this deep sense of national pride. And then, when South Africa hosted the World Cup in '95, and you see Mandela wearing that Springbok jersey, man, chills, literal chills. It went beyond sport. It was reconciliation happening right in front of your eyes.
Okay, that World Cup moment, that's the kind of detail I love digging up for these deep dives. It's this Perfect storm of symbolism, genuine emotion. You can't make that stuff up. Which I guess brings us to Mandela, the man, the leader. Because you gotta admit, not everyone could have pulled off this transition so peacefully.
That's the thing, isn't it? You have this man who survived unimaginable suffering, and yet he comes out not seeking revenge, but with this almost, I don't know, superhuman ability to forgive and to think strategically.
It's like he was this walking embodiment of radical hope, and not just for South Africa, but for how we do things on a global scale, you know?
And you can't discount the timing of it all. Think about the backdrop. Cold War's ending. Old empires are falling apart. And then here comes Mandela, offering a totally different model. Dialogue over force, forgiveness as a political tactic. I mean, it's radical, but it worked.
It really makes you wonder, what if Mandela hadn't been that man at that moment in history? Would the 90s have happened the same way? Would that push for democracy around the world have had that same, I don't know, moral clarity?
It's like a historical what if. That's almost impossible to imagine, right? Because on paper, it's ludicrous. A system built on racism and oppression, dismantled not by war, but by talking, by negotiating, even with the people who created the system in the first place.
It speaks volumes about Mandela, but it also says something to us, you know? Like, how often in our own lives, in our own conflicts, do we choose understanding over revenge? It's tough.
It really is. And how often do we, like you said, even consider forgiveness as a strategy? What Mandela shows us is that it's not weak, it's long-term thinking. It's acknowledging the past happened, but still leaving towards a future where everybody has a place.
And hey, sometimes that place includes a really cool, colorful shirt that makes a statement without having to say a word. But on a serious note, this deep dive has been amazing. I feel like I don't just understand what happened, but the ripple effects of the choices Mandela made.
That's what makes it a true turning point, right? Something seemingly small, one man walking out of prison, ends up changing how we imagine what's possible for all of us.
Absolutely. And for you listening, if this got you thinking, remember, history doesn't happen in isolation. So look around. What seemingly small event is happening right now that might echo into the future? What Mandela moment are we missing because we're just too close to it to see it? Keep those incredible sources coming.